Would you choose love or family if you could only have one? Mia Bennett thought she had her life planned out until she fell for a man her parents would never accept. What happened next changed everything. Growing up, Mia Bennett always felt like she was living in the shadow of her twin sister, Mel. While Mel effortlessly excelled in business administration, perfectly aligning with their parents' expectations, Mia struggled to find her place. Their parents, Dr. Thomas Bennett, a respected university professor, and Helen Bennett, a devoted homemaker, had a clear vision for their daughters: academic success, prestigious careers, and marriages that would enhance the family's reputation. Mel embodied everything they valued: discipline, intelligence, and a commitment to the traditional ideals they upheld. In contrast, Mia felt suffocated by these rigid expectations. No matter how hard she tried to follow the path set before her, she always fell short in their eyes. Her father admired Mel's achievements as a reflection of his own success, while her mother insisted on raising daughters who upheld the family's pristine image. From an early age, Mia sensed that she didn't fit into their world. She felt like an outsider in her own family, constantly observed and scrutinized for not living up to their ideals. Every family gathering, every conversation seemed to revolve around achievements, future plans, and societal expectations. It wasn't enough to be good, she had to be exceptional. But Mia longed for something different, something real. Despite her efforts to meet their high standards, an inner voice urged her to break free. She wanted a life beyond Ivy League schools and corporate careers, a life where she could define success on her own terms. Yet, the weight of her parents' expectations loomed over her, making her question whether she could ever truly escape. In a world where family approval dictated her every move, Mia felt trapped in a life that was never truly hers. It wasn't rebellion she sought, it was freedom. As Mia grew older, the pressure to conform became unbearable. Every aspect of her life was dictated by her parents: what she wore, how she spoke, the career she was expected to pursue. While Mel thrived under these expectations, Mia felt suffocated, desperate to carve out her own identity. Her first acts of defiance were subtle. Instead of the conservative dresses her mother preferred, she experimented with bold eyeliner and edgy outfits. Though small, these choices symbolized something bigger, a rebellion against the life she was being forced into. Each change, no matter how minor, was a step toward discovering who she really was. Her parents were quick to notice. Disapproving glances turned into lectures, and soon, every dinner conversation became a debate about her future. "Why can't you be more like Mel?" her father would say, his voice laced with frustration. "We only want what's best for you," her mother would plead, unable to understand why Mia refused to comply. But their definition of best didn't align with what Mia wanted. She didn't dream of boardrooms and business meetings. She wanted creativity, passion, and a life that felt authentic. The more they pushed, the more she resisted, realizing that their version of success wasn't the only path to happiness. Despite the pressure, Mia knew deep down that she couldn't keep living for others. She had spent years trying to be the daughter they wanted, but in doing so, she had lost sight of herself. It wasn't about rejecting their love, it was about reclaiming her own sense of purpose. And then she met Glenn, a carpenter in his 30s. He was everything her parents disapproved of: independent, unconventional, and unbothered by societal expectations. But with him, Mia felt something she had never felt before: freedom. Mia met Glenn in the university library on a night that would change her life forever. Struggling with an assignment, she barely noticed him at first, but as they struck up a conversation, she quickly realized how different he was from anyone she had ever met. Glenn, a skilled carpenter in his 30s, spoke about life with a passion and ease that mesmerized her. Unlike the people in her world, he wasn't consumed by status or success. He simply loved what he did. As their conversations grew deeper, Mia found herself drawn to his perspective. He saw beauty in simplicity and craftsmanship, in creating something tangible with his hands. With Glenn, there were no pretenses, no expectations, just raw, genuine connection. For the first time, she felt truly seen. Their relationship blossomed quickly, but Mia knew her parents would never approve. To them, Glenn was the antithesis of success. He hadn't attended an elite university. He didn't have a high-powered career. He wasn't someone they could boast about at dinner parties. Yet, Glenn made her happier than she had ever been. One evening, as they sat in a quiet cafe, he took her hand and said, "Mia, I know this might sound crazy, but I see a future for us. A future where we're free to be who we truly are." His words struck a chord deep within her. She had spent her whole life trying to fit into a mold, trying to be the person her parents wanted. But with Glenn, she didn't have to try. She could just be. When Glenn proposed, Mia didn't hesitate. She knew saying yes meant going against everything her parents wanted for her. But for the first time in her life, she was making a decision for herself. Mia knew introducing Glenn to her parents would be difficult, but she wasn't prepared for how cold they would be. When she brought him home for dinner, her father barely looked up from his papers, and her mother's smile was tight and forced. From the moment Glenn introduced himself, the air in the room grew tense. "So, tell us about yourself," her father said, his tone polite but distant. Glenn, ever charismatic, smiled warmly. "I'm a carpenter. I love what I do. There's something special about creating something with your own hands." Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. Her father sighed. "That's different." Dinner was awkward, filled with forced conversation and underlying judgment. When the meal was over, her father asked to speak with her privately. In his study, surrounded by towering bookshelves, he delivered the words Mia had been dreading. "You have a choice, Mia. Either you stay with us and follow the path we've set for you, or you walk away with him." And that choice would change everything. Her stomach twisted. "Dad, this isn't fair. Glenn makes me happy." "This isn't just about happiness," he said sternly. "It's about your future, about our family's reputation. We can't support this." Her mother, standing beside him, had tears in her eyes. "Mia, we love you, but if you choose this path, you're choosing to leave everything behind." Mia's heart pounded. For years, she had tried to be the daughter they wanted, but now, standing in the study where so many expectations had been placed upon her, she knew she couldn't sacrifice her own happiness any longer. With a deep breath, she met her father's gaze. "Then I choose Glenn." And just like that, everything changed. Walking out of her parents' house that night felt surreal. She had expected relief, maybe even exhilaration, but all she felt was an ache in her chest. Despite everything, she had loved them, and now she wasn't sure if they would ever love her the same way again. But there was no turning back. She moved in with Glenn, and together they began to build a life from scratch. The first few months were tough, money was tight, and the weight of her parents' rejection lingered. There were nights when Mia lay awake, wondering if she had made a mistake. Glenn never wavered. He worked tirelessly, pouring himself into his carpentry business, determined to provide for their future. Mia took on the role of managing his schedule and clients, helping to grow the business. Slowly, things began to improve. Glenn's reputation as a craftsman spread, and before long, his income stabilized at around $80,000 a year. They bought a small home on the outskirts of Chicago, a modest, cozy space with tree-lined streets and a quiet charm. Glenn built their dining table by hand, the first piece of furniture in their new home. As they sat together for their first meal in their new place, Mia realized something. For the first time in her life, she felt free. But freedom came at a cost. Months passed and her parents never reached out. Birthdays, holidays, silent. She told herself she didn't need their approval, but deep down their absence left a wound that never quite healed. Still, she had no regrets. She had chosen love, she had chosen herself, and she had built something real. And then one day, her parents finally called. But it wasn't to reconcile. It was out of desperation. Mia never expected to hear from her parents again, so when her phone rang, she hesitated before answering. Her mother's voice was shaky. "Mia, we need your help." Her father had been caught in a scandal at the university, one that cost him his job and reputation. Mel and her husband had cut ties with them, unwilling to be associated with the fallout. With nowhere else to turn, her parents had come to the daughter they had once cast aside. For a fleeting moment, the little girl inside her wanted to fix everything, to be the dutiful daughter who could somehow make it all right. But then she remembered the last words her father had said to her. "If you choose him, You choose to leave this family behind." And so she stood firm. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "I've built a life for myself." There
and
was
I need
silence
to
on the other
protect
end.
it.
Then her father sighed. "I see." It was the final severance, the moment Mia truly knew there was no going back. She had spent so much of her life craving their approval, but now she realized she didn't need it. She had chosen happiness. She had chosen love, and she had built something beautiful in the process. Life with Glenn continued to flourish. His business thrived, their love grew stronger, and soon they had a son, Sawyer, named after the tools Glenn used to craft their future. As she held him in her arms, she felt something she had never felt before: complete peace. She may have lost her parents, but she had gained something even greater, a life that was truly her own. And that was a choice she would never regret. Mia never looked back. The moment she closed the door on her parents, she felt an undeniable sense of finality. The pain of losing them would never fully fade, but as she walked into the home she had built with Glenn, she knew she had made the right choice. She had sacrificed the approval of the people who raised her, but in return, she had gained a life that was finally her own. Life with Glenn was not perfect, but it was real. Their home, though small, was filled with warmth. Every piece of furniture held a story, each crafted by Glenn's hands with love and dedication. The smell of fresh wood lingered in the air, a reminder of the life they had built from nothing. Mia found purpose in helping manage his business, handling clients, schedules, and finances. It was fulfilling in a way she had never experienced before, building something with someone who truly saw her rather than trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for her. Their love deepened with time. Even on the hardest days, when money was tight or when self-doubt crept in, Glenn remained her rock. He never questioned her decision to choose him, never made her feel like she had given up too much. Instead, he reminded her that love wasn't about sacrifice. It was about choosing the right person over and over again. The pain of losing her family never fully disappeared, but with every passing day, it felt less like a wound and more like a scar. Proof that she had survived, she had made a choice, and she had no regrets. Her past was behind her, and her future was finally in her own hands. The first time Mia held her son in her arms, she felt a kind of love she had never known before. Sawyer was small, delicate, and perfect, and as she rocked him gently, she whispered a promise. He would never feel the way she once did. He would grow up in a home where love was not conditional, where his choices were his own. Glenn watched them with quiet pride, his calloused hands resting on the wooden crib he had built just for their son. Everything about their life had been crafted from love, from the walls of their home to the life they had created together. Their journey had not been easy, but it had been theirs, and that was what mattered. As the years passed, Mia no longer longed for the family she had lost. She had created her own. Their home was filled with laughter, late-night storytelling, and the soft hum of Glenn's saw as he worked in his shop. Sawyer grew up watching his father build, learning not just the craft of carpentry, but the deeper lesson hidden within it, that life, like wood, could be shaped into something beautiful if you had the patience and the courage to carve it out. Mia had once feared that choosing her own path meant losing everything, but standing in her home, surrounded by the family she had built, she knew the truth. She had never lost anything worth keeping. She had only ever been finding her way home. Mia's journey was never just about love. It was about the courage to choose herself. She grew up believing that family approval defined her worth, but in walking away, she discovered something more valuable: the power to create a life on her own terms. Her story is a reminder that happiness doesn't come from meeting others' expectations, but from following the path that feels true to who you are. To anyone struggling between duty and desire, know this: you are not selfish for choosing happiness. You are not ungrateful for seeking a life beyond what was planned for you. Sometimes, family is not the one you were born into, but the one you build with love, trust, and understanding. Mia lost the life she once knew, but she gained everything that truly mattered. And in the end, um, the only choice worth making.